Kirsty, that's it. We are recording. There's no turning back. Kirsty Crompton, hello. Thank you so much for talking to me today. Now, I've caught you at home, but usually your office, your working space is you work for Cryoport.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, I know you're going to tell me about Cryoport in just a minute and what Cryoport does. But today we're going to focus on your own personal story, because you have had an incredible journey to motherhood, and I'm dying to hear all about it. Before we get to it, just give us a little heads up though about what Cryoport is and what they do and what you do.
Okay, so I'm the business development director for Cryoport for a certain region, for EMEA, and we basically ship gametes and embryos on a global scale, so around the world, in a shipper, keeping it at a set temperature. And our job is basically to mitigate as much risk as possible during that transportation process, so that hopefully once the embryos or gametes arrive at the other end at the receiving clinic, you know, they are still in the same sort of cryogenic environment that they were when they left.
The word gametes, right? I didn't know what the word gametes meant until I think I was in like my second round of IVF. So if anyone doesn't yet know what that word means, what does
Okay, so gametes is eggs or oocytes and sperm.
So this is very, very special, incredible shipping of the most precious goods from one location to another.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just, I know we're going to go into this more in a separate interview about what, you know, why people do this, but in a nutshell, why would you ship your embryos or eggs or sperm from one place to another?
So for some intended parents, they want to change clinics. During COVID, we had some intended parents stranded on 2 different continents. And if you had already started your fertility treatment, that treatment could be finished or completed. So we were shipping non-stop during that process. And also we shipped for surrogacy agencies, so for donor treatment and that sort of procedure.
Oh my gosh, this is incredible. I never knew about any of this, like prior to starting IVF Babble. It was just something I never ever heard of. But like I said, we're going to go more into how that works in a separate interview. But today I'm going to focus on you, if that's okay, because I'm dying to hear about your journey and what you went through to become a mum. So can you tell me when you started? When did you realize, right, that's it, I want to become a mum? How old were you?
It was around, I think, 2012, and I was 32 at this point. And I think working in fertility becomes really, it's always glaringly obvious that, you know, your clock's ticking sort of thing. And my husband and I, we got married in 2011, and we had talked about having children, and it was part of the plan. But it never seemed, as I suppose with most people, it just never seemed the right sort of time ever. And then all of a sudden we decided to sort of take the launch, and I would say it became quickly quite obvious that it wasn't going to happen. And we'd been trying for just over a year.
Why had you been, so you didn't know of any infertility causes? You just
no. So we took the regular route, like everyone does. We went to the GP. We, you know, we asked them what would happen next, that sort of thing. And then we went through the sort of process like everybody does. So I ended up having a lap and die. My husband had a semen analysis, that sort of thing, you know. And interestingly, from the lap and die, it was found that I had endometriosis, which I didn't know anything about.
So you'd had no symptoms or anything?
No, nothing at all. And it was actually pretty aggressive on the one side as well. But interestingly, I had no symptoms, nothing. Would never have known about it. If I'd not had that procedure, I would never have known.
And what do they do in that procedure?
So, in the lap and die.
Yeah.
So it's basically where it's just during through laparoscopy, and sort of ink is almost, I would say, like a dye.
Yeah.
It's basically pushed through the fallopian tubes just to see if there's any blockages.
Yeah.
And at the time, they just make other sort of little investigations, and that's where the endometriosis was picked up.
My goodness.
I know. So that was zapped away, let's say, during that procedure. And then I was told about that, obviously, when I came round. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if that would sort of solve all of our issues. But then already the sort of procedure had begun. So, so I think my first IUI was in the beginning of 2013. That didn't work. So we ended up having another IUI. That didn't work. And then we ended up. Have you had IUIs?
Two IUIs, yeah.
Yeah. And then, and at this point, we'd already found out that my husband's sperm count was also quite low. So then we had other tests done, and then the clinic I was at in London then thought that I actually had high natural killers. I know.
So, wow. So you were then were you tested again after the two IUIs then?
Yes.
Okay.
And further, and actually I'd moved clinics by then, so I actually had further tests done. More blood. It's never ending, isn't it? It's like rolling on. But
can I just ask why did you move clinics then? Were you unhappy, or was it?
No, not at all. I think because I work in fertility.
Yeah.
The clinic that I ended up at, the gynecologist there, who's the owner of the clinic, was really kind and said, oh, sort of, why aren't you coming to us? And I was a little bit like, it's really expensive. Yeah, so I ended up there at this other clinic in London. And of course I live in Cornwall, so I just went, to a local clinic. It's quite a lot when you're just traveling there for treatment, and I was still working, so.
Yeah, it's full on.
It is full on. It is. Yeah. And actually, seeing it from that perspective, I've worked in fertility for almost 17 years, working in labs with embryologists and things, and trying to improve pregnancy rates. But being a patient and seeing it from that perspective is very, very different. So in my mind, I was prepared. I thought I was prepared. But actually seeing it and seeing how the clinics work from a different view was really interesting and completely eye-opening. But so, yes, so
the natural killer cells. Explain. Can you explain that?
To a certain, this was quite a long time ago now, but to a certain extent. So basically, we were my husband and I renamed ourselves to the Chandler and Monica of real life, because basically my husband had a low sperm count, but any sperm I think that basically did make it through, I was just killing. Gosh. And on top of that, the endometriosis probably wasn't helping either. It was just exacerbating the whole entire situation. So,
my God. So what did they do? When they said that they think that's what you had, or that is what you had, what did they do?
So the next plan then was to, I thought we'd just go plainly down the IVF route, but actually I had, from my egg collection, I had something like 12 oocytes. All of those were ICSI'd, and I think from that I had then 5 viable embryos. And once I had transferred 2, it was decided that 2 would be transferred. And I think that was just based on how I had responded to IUI and various other things. So 2 were transferred. Unfortunately, 2 took, which was amazing. We just felt unbelievably lucky. It was a miracle. It was the first time I'd ever been pregnant. We had never got pregnant naturally on our own ever before. So 2 had taken, but then after my 15-week scan, I lost one of the embryos.
Sorry.
Yeah. And that was it was really, really sad, because actually at the time we were away at someone's wedding. I'd asked permission if I could fly there. So we were in an unknown hospital. It was very late at night. They couldn't do all the proper tests and checks. So we had to wait to fly home the following morning to actually have a scan to see if we had lost both embryos.
Oh my God, how
I
terrible.
know. Yeah, so it was really, really sad. And that evening felt like a lifetime. And I thought, oh, goodness, we've got this far and now it's just going to be taken, sort of thing. So anyway, we got there the next morning, and fortunately, one embryo had held on somehow.
Wow.
Because we had been completely prepared that morning by the hospital to say, like, the chances are there's going to be nothing there when we scan. So just, so we were prepared, although completely devastated. So to find one little embryo hanging on was just not your heart.
God.
I know, and actually still makes me quite upset.
Of course, because all that trauma is still buried in, it's pushed down inside. I've still got trauma inside of me that I've just suppressed and buried, but it's all still in there. And
it's so sad, and it's just such a tough thing to go through, isn't it? Sometimes.
Yes,
it is. But we're fortunate.
It's because there are so many similarities. I had 2 IUIs, and I had an IVF that didn't work, but ICSI, that's the first time I'd ever been pregnant. That's the first, and they put 2 embryos back in. I was very, very, very fortunate that both survived. But when I got severe OHSS, so had to go into hospital, and it was pretty awful. But I do remember them saying to me, I remember nurse saying to me, the likelihood that both embryos had survived was very low.
Yeah.
I remember then thinking, God, I only transferred those embryos 2 weeks ago. Yeah. But the heartbreak that one may not have survived is just overwhelming. So, my God, I wish I could hug you right now.
Oh, thank you. No, and it is sad, and it sounds awful to say, really, but you are comforted almost at the time by the fact that you have one. And it's like, and although you're so sad for the other embryo, I was just so, my husband and I, we were just so grateful that we still had one. I mean, you just can't imagine. It's just, yeah.
And how old was so that was what? So how old? So did you have you had a little girl, didn't you?
I had a little girl, yes. But actually, just to add, it was because of that losing the other embryo that then the clinic said, right, come back in. We had more tests done, and that's when our immunotherapy treatment started. So throughout the rest of the pregnancy, really, right up until.
And what is that? Can you explain that?
I'm probably not the best person, but it's basically, I should have read about this before. Sorry, it's a long time ago. But
what does it do?
So it basically is, I suppose, it suppresses your the immune system and allows the clinic more control, basically, on what's happening throughout the pregnancy. A lot like the nasal spray in the beginning. It just allows everybody more control, and they're suppressing things in your own body that are just trying to take over.
Yeah,
I think it's probably the best way.
Science and medicine is so very, very.
It is, yeah. But of course, that meant then I needed to travel to London more. And although I was working in London at the time, once you're having like 3 blood tests a day, as you know, it's from early morning. It's really hard to juggle, isn't it? Like full-time work in with fertility treatment, I would say, from that perspective.
Yes. Did you and your other embryos, your remaining 3 embryos, so are those still in the freezer?
So they were vitrified. Yes, they are. Yeah, so they were vitrified, and they are just cryopreserved, ready for us if we want them again.
Do you think you will?
Sorry, well, at the time.
Sorry.
No, not at all. But at the time when we had Elsie, so my first, my husband and I did talk about in a few years, like going back, and I was like, I couldn't comprehend how that would work once you'd already got a child. I mean, I sit in waiting rooms in IVF clinics all the time, and I see people with, children on their laps whilst, they're going through the process. And I think it just looks really hard work. And I thought the fact that I would have to travel back and forth. And at the time I was thinking, how would I do that? Because I was working, how would I do that with a baby? I was also doing a master's at the time. And I couldn't comprehend full-time work and all of that. So for the time being, we put it on hold. And then interestingly, I started my master's when Elsie was 9 months old, as well as still working in fertility. But then when the day I handed in my dissertation, my husband and I booked a holiday for a rest with my daughter. And I was just so excited to go. I mean, it had been full on for 2 years. And then interestingly, nothing kicked in from my end. But interestingly, my husband said, "Oh, look at your belly button. Looks just like when you were pregnant with Elsie." And I was like, "Really?" Because of course I was trying on bikinis, and I said, "Oh, yes." Anyway, we did a test, and we ended up that we were pregnant, and it was not planned. We had not even discussed it, and we were just.
God, isn't life completely and utterly insane? You think what you went through to have Elsie, all those tests, operation, the everything.
And it's all the, it's not just that, it's like the things that take over your daily life, isn't it? It's like you've got to drink X amount of water. The clinic I went to, you had to drink X amount of milk as well. And it's all of these things and these little tick boxes. I ate really well. I didn't have any alcohol. I mean, I didn't smoke anyway. But all of these things. And like with Teddy, I remember thinking, oh my goodness, I've had vodka. I was just like it's when you've gone through that stringent process, it was just like, oh, I've consumed alcohol.
Yeah.
And the beginning first stage is clear, and it was just, and at the scan, we booked an early scan actually for that one, because I was just like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
One, I didn't believe it was true, because I didn't believe that my body would just work naturally, and I don't know. I think after you've had fertility treatment, you don't have a lot of faith. I lost faith in my own body working naturally. So when I went through like Braxton Hicks and stuff, I remember saying to the midwife, what's this weird thing happening? And she was like, oh, that's just your body kicking into, And I was like, oh my goodness, it's naturally learned how to work. I was so impressed.
To me, having seen the intricacies of IVF and ICSI, seeing an embryologist, I've watched embryologists, since I had my own treatment, get that sperm and put it into that egg and have that transferred into a woman, and it's still not work, right? Yeah. To then hear about natural conception, to me, it sounds like magic. It's just magic. I don't know how that cannot work, but that can work. It just blows my mind.
I know. And I think as well, you have to think that there's so many people involved in the fertility treatment process. You've got not only the intended parents, and they're in their bubble, and then you've got the gynecologist, and he's trying to do his part. You've got the embryologists in the lab, and they're trying to do their part. The nurses, who are amazing as well. Yeah. But then you have the suppliers of all the products that are being used in that lab. I mean, you have so many hundred of people willing this tiny little embryo, to become viable. That's one giant journey. Just going from, oocyte to being able to be transferred or cryopreserved.
Yeah.
And then you have all of these people willing this embryo viable, and then for it to become a pregnancy. So I think seeing it from both sides, it's just, there's a lot of hope there, I think, for intended parents.
Yeah. Did you tell me you've got a picture, or has Elsie, your daughter, seen a picture of her as an embryo in the dish?
Yes. So in year 1, when she goes in September, she'll be in year 3. So in year 1, they had to do an autobiography. And my husband and I thought it was, and we've always said to Elsie that she was fertility, but not knowing that she probably didn't really comprehend what that was. So I thought this is a great opportunity actually to just, get the old photos out and whatnot. So I built her almost like a little montage. So it was, and I called it Super Special Me. So it was her in the first dish, and she was, so in the dish, and obviously I've got both embryos, so I had to put both pictures there because we didn't know which one was Elsie.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So and then of course when you have fertility treatment, you have loads of scans, don't you, compared to when you're just, you probably don't know, but when you're regularly pregnant, you only have a couple. So I got her at all different sort of millimeter sizes, which you can see on the picture. So it was this is me the size of a baby, this is me the size of a a grape, or and I just made it so that she could explain it to present to her friends in year 1, so that they could all understand. And and she loved it.
Be emotional.
And to be honest, I think Elsie thinks everyone's made in a dish. And she already knows, obviously, you need an egg and a sperm, and that grows into an embryo. But I think in terms of the context of how those two things meet, I think she just thinks it all happens in a dish for everyone.
I love that. I love that so much. And I suppose, and with your incredible story, you know, and the job that you do, do you think that you have an even more sort of special relationship with the men and women that are coming to you and you know, at Cryoport, you know, wanting to ship these incredible, you know, items because you've been there?
I think so. And well, do you know, and I hope that does come across, because I have intended parents. I mean, I'm not generally day-to-day involved with intended parents, but sometimes emails are sent to me and I do reply. And I hope it comes across that I am genuinely, not only obviously empathetic, of course, but also completely transparent. So I will share with intended parents that I've had treatment in their personal email. And I will say openly and honestly, if they say, well, you know, we're looking for hand carry, or we're looking for this, we have 1 embryo left, that's it. You know, maybe they've had cancer treatment, or you know, there's some other reason. I will give my utmost honest view on what I think, what I would personally do if I were them in that position, because I like to feel that I actually know what they've already processed and been through. And it's so precious, you just can't even, it's really hard to get across, isn't it? It's really hard to explain.
It is. But I think, honestly, people like you, Kirsty, you know, IVF warriors, you know, that's what we say, don't we? IVF warriors who have been through their own journey and just desperately want to help and support other men and women, you know, on a journey too. And so how can people reach out to you personally?
Definitely. I mean, I can give you my email address to put on, and I would welcome that. Like, if people want to contact me to ask, even if it's only about my own journey, if it's about what Cryoport do, anything, just please feel free. And I think if people were more transparent in the industry, it makes everything so much easier, and it allows everybody to make more informed decisions about their own treatment cycle and about their own plan and about their own cryopreservation and shipping, and just makes life easier.
Yes, amazing. And you and me, let's pick up again on another day on you know, we've said we want to cover the topic of, you know, things that we didn't know before our journey, you know, certain key elements of an IVF journey that, you know,
I think before and after.
That would be lovely. But yeah, let's do this more often, Kirsty, and thank you so much for talking to us today.
You're welcome.